There was a bar next to the subway outlet where I used to work, and there were so many incidents where people used to get so drunk that they slept outside the bar, subway, or the nearby lane. So it had become so common that I did not get fazed by it any longer. But I never knew something like this could lead to changing my life forever. One day when I was closing the outlet around 11:30 p.m., I noticed a guy lying outside the subway outlet. I clicked my tongue in disbelief and thought that if these rich brats cannot even hold their liquor, then why bother drinking so much? He was lying on his stomach, so all I could see was the back of his head and clothes. But for some reason, his figure looked extremely familiar, as if I see it every day. I started to walk toward the bus stop and kept thinking about where I may have seen the guy. I continuously argued with myself about going back and checking on him. The next day while I was working, I noticed many people in black uniforms walking past the subway and going to the bar. I continued to focus on my work, and that was when we heard a ruckus, as if there was a fight going on around there. Every person who was present there went outside to see what was going on. I too decided to have a look around what it was all about. As I went out, I noticed the owner of the bar was getting beaten as hell and bleeding from every part of his body. He noticed me watching him and pointed his fingers toward me, saying, "There's your young master, now leave me alone." As he somehow managed to let out those words, every head present then turned toward my direction. I figured it'd be best to keep my mouth shut by judging the situation on the bar owner's condition. Those men with the uniform turned, and all of a sudden, bowed their head toward me. "Our apologies, sir. We shouldn't have left your side last night. We failed your test of protecting you and are ready to accept any punishment you give us." One of them, who looked like the leader, said to me. I could not figure out the situation, but still, I decided to go with the flow if I wanted to protect my life. I hesitantly looked at them and said, "It's okay. You guys are good to go." As I said that, they looked at me with disbelief and suspicion, as if I had said something they never expected from me. "Thank you so much, Master, for forgiving us, even though we do not deserve your mercy. But don't dare to question your decision. Let's go to your mansion, sir." He opened the door to a very luxurious-looking car that I had never seen in my entire life. I silently got in without even questioning it. I figured they may have confused me with someone else and played along. A man sitting inside the car asked me, "Master, I dare to ask, why are you wearing this cheap-looking outfit?" I stared at him trying to think of an excuse, but all of a sudden, he looked at me with an expression that seemed like he was terrified of me, and then started to apologize. It was good that I did not have to give an excuse. I had to come up with something because someone might figure out that I wasn't the person they all were thinking about and may end up killing me. My clothes got dirtied last night, so someone gave them to me. I could feel that my excuse was weaker and harder to believe, but I could tell that this foolish man had believed me. The car entered a huge villa, and they opened the gate for me. After that, they took me to a huge-looking room, and some servants came in to help me change my outfit. After changing, I was called into the dining hall, which seemed even bigger than my apartment, and there was a gorgeous-looking woman who came toward me and kissed me without any warning. After that, she sat near my seat and started to eat. And as I was eating, I noticed a huge portrait of someone who looked exactly like me on the front wall. I had a hunch before, but now I understood the entire situation that I was in. That night when I was struggling with my thoughts of going back to check on the familiar-looking guy or not, I decided to go back. I went back and was shocked to see the person lying there looked exactly like me, as if I was looking in a mirror. It was not just the face, but his style, his physique, everything looked exactly like me, except he was wearing nicer clothes than mine. That was when I remembered something about doppelgangers. I had read somewhere that there are 8 of them for every person, but you're never supposed to cross paths with them, and if you do by any chance, then one of you will tragically die. I did not want it to be true, so I decided to take the guys with me to my apartment and think of a solution to prevent my death from happening. After taking him to my apartment, I started thinking of a solution. That was when a random idea popped up in my head. I thought, if this guy was to die, then I would automatically come out from the face of harm. Now, the question was, how I kill a guy without getting caught? After a while, I poured alcohol over his entire body and placed it in the kitchen. I tied his mouth and then lit his body on fire. I got out of the place, and after a while, the entire apartment was on fire. I thought if no one knew that there was anyone inside, no one would know that someone died from the fire. But I never knew the possibility of that guy being this filthy rich that people took orders from him and called him master. "Honey, do you want to play with me tonight?" the gorgeous woman said while giving me a naughty look, and I grinned while nodding my head. There was no way I was going to let this opportunity pass by me. The next day, I saw the news that the guy working in the Subway outlet near the bar died in a fire in his apartment. I closed the news and called for the girls in my room, as I was ready to play with my newfound identity. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
I had a real rough upbringing. I won't bore you with the little details, but my parents were in the picture. I was in and out of abusive foster homes, and when I was 16, I spent a long couple of months sleeping on the streets. Lots of messed up stuff happened, a lot, and sometimes I feel like I could write a book of all the scary stuff I had to go through during my teenage years. But this one thing is by far the most frightening thing that happened. The worst thing is that the guy caught me when I was really hungry. Otherwise, I might have had the good sense to realize what was going on. So, like I said, I was bumming around, trying to scrape together a couple of bucks to get some food. I was standing at a crosswalk with a sign that said, 16, homeless and hungry. And every time the lights went red, I'd walk out and flash my sign to them and hope they'd toss me their pocket change. Sometimes it worked, sometimes not, and on this particular night, people didn't seem to be feeling generous at all. All until this one guy pulled up, got out of his car and was like, "Oh my God, honey, are you okay?" He seemed so kind, and I was just feeling so weak, and this sudden act of apparent kindness was almost too much for me. So I'm holding back tears as I'm telling him how hungry I am, and as he asks if he can take me to get some food before helping me find a place to stay, all I could think about was the food. I know I shouldn't have done it. I know I shouldn't have gotten in the guy's car, but I was young. I was naive. I figured, if anything happens, I can just run away or call for help. I even pictured myself like ducking and rolling from the car if he tried driving me anywhere secluded, like they do in the movies. So as dumb as it sounds to say it now, I actually felt kind of safe. But if I'm being honest with myself, all I was thinking about was the idea of a burger or something. I was practically salivating just thinking about it. When he asked me where I had in mind, I think I said Wendy's or something because I remember us driving past one, pointing it out to him, and he just ignored me. That's when I realized something was wrong, and I started to ask him why he hadn't stopped at the Wendy's. That's when this formerly really kind person turned into a monster right before my eyes. "Shut up," was all they said. They didn't even take their eyes off the road while saying it. But hey, I had my little backup plan, and I wouldn't even have to tuck and roll at high speeds. We were still in the inner city by that point, with stoplights every quarter of a mile or whatever. So I just shut my mouth, waited until we were at a stoplight, unlocked the passenger door, then pulled on the door handle. Nothing. I pulled on it again. Still nothing. I pulled it a third time, and that's when I noticed that it didn't feel right. Like it felt hollow almost, like it wasn't connected to anything. And I suppose that's because it wasn't. I can remember that horrible sinking feeling that went through me even today, realizing it was a trap, realizing that there was no way out. When I started screaming and bashing on the car window, he just turned up the stereo and ran a red light so I couldn't alert anyone. Then, and I don't even really know what came over me, but in a panic, I kinda leaned back in my seat and started bashing the windshield with my bare feet. I kicked and kicked and kicked until the glass began to crack, and the guy trying to kidnap me couldn't do much about it, as he had to keep his eyes on the road. Yeah, he threw a few punches, and they sure did hurt, but I still had enough freedom to do some serious damage to his car's windshield. Then, it's his turn to scream at me, telling me how I'm dead, how he's going to make me beg to be killed before the end. It was terrifying, sure, but I knew I'd gotten to him. So I'm just screaming, "Yeah? Well, screw you too." Then, out of nowhere, blue and red lights and the whoop of a police siren. And you should have seen the guy's face. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, like the color just drained from his face as he looked into the rear view. I didn't think I was out of the woods yet. I thought I'd have to endure some crazy police chase or something, and even then, the guy might just pull out a gun and kill us both. But no. He pulls what turned out to be a stolen car over, jumps out, and then just runs off as fast as his legs could carry him. To this day, I've never been so happy to see the cops. These days, I have my life together, and I've learned to dread seeing those same blue and red lights in my rear view. It usually means a speeding ticket or a driver's safety course. Okay, I get it, I'm not the best driver. But sometimes, just sometimes, I remember the feeling I get when the cops pulled me out of that car. Just complete, all-consuming, gratifying relief. Their intervention helped me get back into foster care, and for the first time, I actually felt at home with the family I was assigned to. And the best thing about that night, I actually got my Wendy's. All thanks to the cops that rescued me. So thank you guys. I owe you literally everything.
"Hey, let's go eat at KFC," I said with excitement in my voice. "Nah, I don't think I want to go outside. Why not just ask Fiona to bring takeout?" she said while lying on the couch, spreading her laziness around. "My name is Samantha. This lazy punk ass is my elder sister Emily, and the one roaming outside like a butterfly is my younger sister Fiona, who's currently outside hanging out with her friends. All three of us have completely different personalities, which clash with each other sometimes, but we still manage to deal with each other. While Emily is intuitive, moody, emotional, and sensitive, Fiona, on the other hand, is fierce, bold, charismatic, and confident. And I am moody, fierce, reckless, and sensitive. As per Fiona's personality traits, she's pretty good at befriending people and socializing, but Emily is the exact opposite. She has a pretty hard time socializing with people, which is the very reason she coops herself inside the house and doesn't really go out very often. Well, I was just trying to take her out since she'd been locked inside in the house for the past 6 days and refused to see the sunlight. Besides, our life is going pretty well. We laugh together, fight like crazy, but reconcile as well. The three of us loved each other to death, and trust me, I can do anything for either of them. Fine, if you don't want to go out, then call Fiona yourself for the chicken. I'm not your messenger, I said in a defeated voice and sat beside her on the couch. I grabbed the TV remote and started switching through channels while she dialed our sister's number. Fiona told her that she'd be coming home a little bit late because she had movie plans with her friends, so we had really no other choice but to order online, which we used to avoid for obvious reasons. The three of us lived in an apartment that lacked security, and the neighboring apartments were also pretty empty, so we thought it would be best for us to avoid any strangers coming to our place. But since Emily was feeling down for some reason that she was refusing to share, I had to let our rules slide this time. I placed an order for 2 large chicken buckets from the nearest outlet, and it showed that it'll be delivered in approximately 35 minutes, so we started waiting while watching TV. About 15 minutes passed when Fiona called to inform us that her plans had been canceled and she was on her way. We told her she didn't need to take us out anymore because we had already ordered it, so she could just come home directly. Do you think she canceled her plans to buy me KFC chicken? Emily asked all of a sudden. No, if she wanted to do that, she would have informed us earlier. Something must have happened among her friends, I said while watching the movie that was streaming on television. As almost 40 minutes passed and the delivery boy still hadn't reached our apartment, I took out my phone to track the order, and it showed that the order was just outside. That was when the door clicked, and Fiona walked in with the chicken bucket in her hands, but the two of us looked with shocking expressions on her face. What happened, Fee? Why are you covered in blood? Emily ran toward her and asked, but she fell and started crying. Her clothes looked torn. She had a mark on her neck, as if someone tried to strangle her, and there were scratches on her hand. I looked at my phone again while trying to analyze the situation, and it hit. Why isn't the delivery status showing delivered yet? I asked in a slow, panicky voice, and she turned her head up and started to cry even more. I left the consoling to Emily and went outside the apartment to check on the situation. As I trailed the blood through the stairs, I saw a man in his 30s lying unconscious, brutally injured. Fiona's hair stick was laying beside him, covered in blood. As I was staring at the stick and him, I felt a fit of rage in me that I had never felt before. I couldn't think of anything else except that this was not enough punishment for someone like him. Are you going to call the police, Sam? Emily asked the moment I walked in. I looked at her, and then at our little sister's heartbreaking condition. No, I'm not, I said, and walked toward the storeroom for the cleaning supplies. What are you going to do? She sensed my intention and panicked. Exactly what's supposed to be done. I grabbed the bucket and mop and walked outside. It was a good thing that no one else lived in this shabby building. For now, it would make my job a lot easier. Emily grabbed my hand and looked at me with pleading eyes. Please, Sam, we will get caught. There's a tracker on that. As she said that, I showed her my phone, in which the delivery status was showing delivered. He is a monster, Emmy. He doesn't deserve to live, I said. There was a determination in my eyes as I pulled my hand away from her. First, I cleaned all the blood around the stairs and floor, and as he was coming back to his senses, I knocked him unconscious again. Then I carried him to his bike and drove it to a deserted bridge where I set it on fire with him on it. As I was sure he was on the brink of death, I threw him and his bike into the river. The regrets started coming to me as I was going back to my sister's. The consequences of my actions just came rushing to me one by one. I started to panic, and I fell on the ground. I was thinking about what would happen to my sisters if they got caught up in this mess, just because I went on my own to punish a sinner in a fit of my rage. I knew they were going to discover the body eventually, and there were too many loopholes in my plan to get caught. And if I get caught later, their life may end up getting ruined. I stood up and walked back to my apartment, and when I reached there, they were waiting for me, worried. Are you okay, Fee? I asked, wiping away her tears. She embraced me while crying. I know we all have our differences, and we may fight with each other, but there's nothing that we would not do for each other. That is why I had made up my mind about how to protect these two from my actions. You're going to be okay, right? Emily's voice was filled with worry about me, so I just nodded my head, and she forced a smile in return, because we all knew nothing was going to be the same again. Oh, hey Fee, here's your hair stick. I washed it clean for you. As we were going to bed, I walked to Fiona's room and handed it to her. The next morning, I woke up before the two of them and sneakily walked out of the house. I had left a letter for them, which said that whatever I was doing was to protect all of us. I had apologized for my recklessness, along with the lines that I should have called the police. I did not have an ounce of remorse for killing that guy, because what he did to my sister was monstrous, and he deserved that. The regret I had was about the fact that I did not think about my family before taking action, and I was going to repent that. So you're saying you killed the delivery man because he attempted to rape you? The officer sitting in front of me asked, and I nodded my head yes.
One night in May of 2010, the Suffolk County Dispatch Center in Long Island, New York, received a call from a terrified young woman. When asked what the nature of her emergency was, the caller replied that someone was trying to kill her. In a display of brutal honesty, the young woman admitted that she was a working girl and that a call to a client had gone horribly wrong. She added that she had successfully fled his apartment, but that she was terrified that he might be following her. When asked her location, the caller replied she was in the area of Ocean Parkway and Oak Beach, a small community located on the eastern side of Jones Beach Island. Since Oak Beach is built around the small stretch of 15-mile-long Ocean Parkway, the dispatcher told the young woman to make her way to a well-lit, open space near the highway. The plan was to position the girl in such a bright and public place that it might deter her attacker from making a move, but it also allowed nearby police units to race down the highway until the caller could see and hear their blaring lights and sirens. Again, such police activity would surely deter any potential attackers. Towards the end of their conversation, the caller is said to have said to the dispatcher, "Okay, I can see the cops now, thank you so much." The dispatcher then relayed the information to the patrol car, telling them the girl would be just a few hundred yards ahead of them. The caller once again thanked the dispatcher, then hung up the phone, apparently just seconds away from flagging down the incoming officers. But those officers say they didn't see any female in their early 20s standing by the side of the parkway. In fact, they didn't see anyone at all. They continued to prowl up and down the highway for a while just to make sure they hadn't missed anything, but there was nothing. The cops in question hoped for the best. After all, there was a chance she'd been picked up by a friend or a coworker. Maybe she'd even caught a cab or found some other method of escape. But regardless, the girl's name and description were passed along to Homicide and Missing Persons as a potential Jane Doe. 7 months later, their worst fears came true. On the morning of December 11, 2010, Officer John Myuu and his trained cadaver dog Blue were hard at work. They had been tasked with searching the surrounding area for any signs of the missing girl, and for the past half a year, they had been systematically searching and eliminating grid square after grid square in a comprehensive search for her remains. Over the course of the summer, he had unsuccessfully searched several gated beach communities in the area for any sign of the missing girl, but each time, despite scouring one or two areas that he thought were of particular interest, he had no luck. This wasn't for any lack of trying or skill either. Blue, his trusted German Shepherd, was a veritable expert in finding decomposing bodies. Even if they had been buried up to a depth of around 6 or 7 feet, Blue would paw at the ground and bark, and he wasn't often mistaken. This is why, on that chilly December morning, when Blue began to alert towards the beach near Ocean Parkway, John trusted Blue to bring him results. Lo and behold, the decaying corpse of a 24-year-old female were found in an unmarked, shallow grave in the sandy earth. But that wasn't the only set of remains that Blue alerted to that day. Even with the thick vegetation and light layer of snow, the area on the opposite side of the highway proved to be nothing less than a graveyard, with Blue alerting every couple of feet. Not only were Shannon Gilbert's remains found, but the body of the missing Melissa Barthélemy was found, reduced to nothing more than a skeleton interred in a burlap sack. Police managed to recover 3 other bodies in the grassy area, that of Maureen Brainerd, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and the missing Shannon Gilbert, who Officer Myuu had originally been looking for. All were within just 500 feet from one another. The following March, during the recovery of the other 5 bodies, the remains of one Jessica Taylor were found in a shallow grave at the side of Ocean Parkway. This was extremely worrying for investigators because what they only described as partial remains belonging to Jessica had been found 8 years earlier over in nearby Manorville. It was looking more and more likely that the cops had a serial killer on their hands, as 3 additional sets of remains were unearthed over the following month, including those of an unidentified female toddler, an unidentified Asian trans woman, and Valerie Mack, whose partial remains had been previously found in Manorville in November of 2000. Despite mounting evidence of a serial killer being at work, it took until November of 2011 for law enforcement to announce that they believed one person to be responsible for all 10 murders, that the person is most likely a native of Long Island, and that there'd be a $25,000 reward for any information leading to their arrest. As of December 2015, the Suffolk County Police had been assisted in the investigation by a number of FBI agents. The FBI stepping in was preceded by the disturbing revelation that former Police Commissioner James Burke had been blocking FBI involvement in the so-called Long Island serial killer murders and had been doing so for years. Burke resigned shortly after the scandal broke, and his reasoning behind blocking the FBI is yet to be determined. But the fact that a man so high up in the police hierarchy could deny such cases of vital material and human resources is deeply confounding. Whether or not he was trying to cover up the murders, or it was foolish pride that had him eschewing any federal assistance, it's anyone's guess. But Burke was sentenced to 46 months in prison in November of 2016 on charges of assault and conspiracy. Local police and FBI agents worked steadily on the case for almost 2 years before a Suffolk County prosecutor announced that John Bittroff, a carpenter from Manorville, was suspect in at least one of the murders. Bittroff had been convicted in May of that year of the murders of 2 female escorts in 1993 and 1994, and in June 2019, homicide detectives proposed steps to use genetic genealogy to identify the unidentified victims and possibly the Long Island serial killer himself. It's unknown that any such tests have taken place, but if they have, they certainly didn't implicate Bittroff any further, as no further attempts to charge him seem to have been made. Those affected by the murders had to wait years for any additional information, but in January of 2020, Suffolk County Police released images of a belt found at the crime scene, one embossed with either the letters HM or WH, depending on the orientation of the belt, embossed in black leather. Police believe that the belt may well belong to the Long Island serial killer himself, but would not comment on exactly where the belt was found. However, they did mention the new scientific evidence was being used in the investigation, and they had launched GilgoNews.com, a website enabling Suffolk County Sheriff's Office to share news and receive tips regarding the investigation. Even though John Bittroff had a history of murdering working girls, the complete dearth of physical evidence means we're forced to consider other suspects in the murder of some, if not all, of the victims. Homicide detectives briefly considered Joseph Brewer, an Oak Beach resident, to be a suspect, given that he was one of the last people known to have seen Shannon Gilbert alive. It was he that apparently hired her as an escort from Craigslist on the night of her disappearance, and told police that shortly after Shannon arrived at his residence, she began acting erratically, and he made no contact with her after she fled his home. Shannon was reportedly seen running through Oak Beach, pounding on the doors of homes in Brewer's neighborhood. Around this time, Shannon called 911 saying that they were trying to kill her. Police, however, did not find any evidence of wrongdoing, and Brewer was quickly cleared as a suspect. It does raise the question, though, if she was looking for refuge, would she not have simply stayed at Joseph's place? Why expose herself at such an apparently perilous moment? It also came to light that just 2 days after Shannon was declared missing, an Oak Beach resident named Peter Hackett had telephoned Shannon's mother to inform her that he was taking care of her. When she asked what he meant by that, he told her that he ran a home for wayward girls. When pressed, he hung up. He flatly denied this phone call ever took place when the police paid him a visit, but investigators proved, though, that Hackett had indeed called Shannon's mother using his cell phone records. It seemed all too much of a coincidence that Shannon's body was found just a stone's throw away from Hackett's home residence, too. and her family have stated on multiple occasions that they believe he had something to do with their daughter's death. However, police later learned that Hackett had a history of inserting himself into or exaggerating his role in certain major events, and that he had done exactly the same thing with a number of other high-profile murders and disappearances around the wider New York area. Hackett later left town and seems to have been completely rolled out as a suspect by investigating police. This leads us back to former Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke, who, if you remember, resigned his position and eventually went to prison for a series of corruption scandals. In December 2016, Shannon's family discovered that an escort had approached the police to state that she suspected that Burke might be connected to the Long Island serial killer case, confirming something they had long suspected. The escort stated that she had attended a party in Oak Beach in April of 2011, and it was at this party that she saw none other than James Burke in attendance. Not only did Burke proposition her at said party, but she also witnessed him engaging in some disturbingly violent behavior. According to her, Burke was seen dragging a woman of Asian descent along a carpeted floor by the hair. This appalling display was stopped by other partygoers, but the other girls present came to learn that Burke's violent behavior was caused by him being unable to climax during his time with the girl. The girl in question wasn't even a working girl, and the argument had only stemmed because he'd, according to her, tried to throw a few $100s at me following the encounter. I told him I wasn't a working girl, and that's when he got violent. It was evident that by this point, not only did Burke make a habit of soliciting and visiting escorts, he was also prone to violence whenever things didn't go his way. As of the time of writing, the identity of the Long Island serial killer remains a mystery, and for all we know, he is still very much at large. The disturbing aspects of former police chief James Burke's behavior might well just be a coincidence, and the Long Island serial killer might well turn out to be someone entirely different. But given his attempts to block FBI involvement, the murderer of 10 to 16 young women might well be one of his own blood relatives, perhaps an old friend of his who might at one point have been involved in law enforcement. It's certainly disturbing to discover an active serial killer, especially one with apparent ties to police corruption. And even though the killings seem to have subsided in the wake of intensive investigation, the Long Island serial killer may just be waiting and watching, biding his time before he can strike again.